start the recording again. All right. So what are we gonna do? We have, quite magically, 400 of these guys. We're gonna move them into formation. We're not going to wait on that. And there we go, beautiful formation. All right, really run with the wind. All right, so this is the scenario. We have Zooties firing. We have 400 of them. This is an unusually large number, right? But it's not unusual in terms of the number of Zui, because there are tournament games in the past that you have Cetan games where the number of Zuti to counter ships. When the beach lost on Cetans, they spam factories, and what emerges from those factories is Zutis. So the fact that we have a lot of them is not unusual. What is unusual is that we have 400 of them firing at once. But this was a very clean case to showcase the performance improvement that we can have. So let's look at the baseline first. The baseline is that moment when essentially nothing happens, and we're just gonna look at the sim speed and see what that does. So just having these units, right, which is 400 units, that's quite a big number. And we've got some, if I'm not mistaken, we've got some units here in the center too. Right, we've got the civilian base. We've got a whole bunch of walls all over the map. So by all means, the map is not empty. But just having all of this takes about, is my CPU speed? 5. Let me actually path. Set affinity. Set priority real time. It takes about 5 milliseconds. 4.8, 5 milliseconds. Right, that's the baseline that we have. Now there's a couple of things that are important to for some reason it goes up to 7 right now. Do we have stuff burning? Yeah, we still have stuff burning. Okay. Very important to realize is that if we zoom in and see the hover effect of the Zuti, then the baseline is about 2 milliseconds higher. So that's 7-8 milliseconds right now. If you would zoom out again, the hover effects disappear and you can immediately see it go down, right, to 5 milliseconds. One may wonder, what does the hover effect have to do with the simulation? I don't know. I think, at least that's what I noticed when testing myself, the spawning of the particles is done by the simulation thread, but the continuation of the particles, so once they have spawned, their actual lifespan, between quotation marks, is not done by the simulation thread. So I assume that it needs to check the height map or something, or check the unit position or something like that, and that's done on the simulation thread. Which is why it's really important that we do the tests when we're completely zoomed out, so that we know that we're not looking at effects spawning or not spawning, but that we're really looking at the impact of these units. Okay, I'm gonna change the map and get this map. This one bumps up to 5 and 7, even though my CPU is very stable. Let's change the map real quick. A map with almost Whitefire sounds good. All right. Don't kill the trees. Okay, too bad. So now we've got some fire here. Yeah, let's get rid of the fire first before we continue. Okay, it seems like we're there. So let's get our units. Zuti. 400 again. Let's go here. That seems decent. All right. So now we have, let's make sure they all fire at once. Oh. You probably don't want to stand there. Ten milliseconds, 11, 10, 11, 11 milliseconds, 10, 11. All right, so something between 10 and 11. And if we stop them, then our baseline is, say, 3, 3.5, 3.2, 3, 2.9, 3, say 3 milliseconds, 2.7, let's say 3 for the sake of it. So just gonna write it down real quick. Baseline 3 to 4 milliseconds, and firing 10 to 11 milliseconds. And 3 is pretty generous, considering it's on 4.5 now. So that's what we have. Now let's look at what is really happening here. We have the Zuti, which is XSL 0103. We close all the others. Don't save. And in here we have a projectile. There we go. This is the projectile script that we have. Very important. The Zuti, when it fires, just to see it in action, creates a projectile, and then the projectile splits up into 5 different projectiles. And that's what we're seeing here too. We create a child projectile, and we do that for number of projectiles times, which is the fragments, which is part of the blueprint. Okay, so that means that we have a second script, which is this one. And this does 2 times damage area with 1. This causes the trees to causes this. And we've got this very long if statement, right? So it causes the trees to do that. A create decal. That's the little decals that we see here.
I hate to be that guy, but they're called decals.
Oh. Decals?
Decal, yeah.
A decal.
Don't listen to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, don't listen to me.
I'm gonna do that wrong a few more times. Feel free to correct me.
Don't worry, don't worry. I'm gonna be having to go now anyway. Have a meeting.
Okay, all right. Well, good luck with the meeting.
I think we offended him.
No, I actually do have a meeting to go to. Yeah, thank you so much, Chip. I look forward to seeing the video.
All right. Good luck in your meeting.
See you next time.
Yep. So here we have the on impact, and now what's important here is that there is this chain going on. So let's look at Seraphim projectiles. And here we have this class. This doesn't change the functions, just the tables. So that means that we inherit everything from the multi-poly trail projectile. So let's go to that one. Default projectiles, which is this one, which has a very large on create. And this one inherits from emitter projectile, so let's go to that one, which again has an onCreate. And this one inherits from projectile, so let's go to that one, which is the base class. And here we have an onCreate, no onCreate, multipoly. This one is onCreate, but we were interested in the onImpact, which means that if this one doesn't override it, these don't override it. So the onImpact is this one right here, which is this, all this logic here to do the actual damage or other interactions when we do an impact. So that's what we're dealing with. And again, just to reiterate, it's important that we don't look at the effects when we do this this check, because right now it's 17 milliseconds, but if I zoom out, it's only 1110. Right, that's the impact of just seeing the effects. Now, generally, you don't have 400 SUFI firing at one place, so the effects, you know, they do have a minor hit, but not as large as now. But for the sake of clarity, we're always going to do what we're going to be doing when we zoom out. And that's the analysis. So we know what we want to change, right? We've got two major events happening. We've got the creation of the projectile, and we've got the onImpact. Just to confirm, because we have a profiler these days, so let's use it. Yes. Here's the profiler. And I'm going to need to take a screenshot of this. There's a lot of lambda calls too. And that's interesting. I didn't really expect that. We have, all right, so this is interesting. So let's take a screenshot real quick. There we go. We have set meta table, which is called, so all of these, this growth is over the past 10 ticks. And given that if we do nothing, everything essentially dies out, we can safely assume that whatever's happening right now is from these projectiles. But let's look at our screenshots. So we've got set meta table. Set meta table is used in the class. When we create an instance of a class, then this code here is no. This is the old one. State. There is somewhere here hidden. There it is. That's this set meta table. So this ensures that when we create an instance of the projectile, that we have all the functionality that we would expect. It does some init functions and it returns the object that we made. That's the set meta table. Next is for loops and those type of things. Random is probably from random float right here, or from, for example, if we look at the splitting, we've got some random floats here too, right? So that's where random is coming from. The import that we have right here is a bit bogus in my opinion. We have an import going on, and that's right here. All right, so every time the shell hits the floor, we're importing this file. And import is again not a magical thing. There's a module named import, and we're doing this function, which means that we're doing this operation, which lowers the string. So if we had the string jip, then that would be jip, right? We check if it exists, and if it does, which in this case it does always, we return existing, but we still do this operation right here and the function call to import. So that's a bit meh. Let's look at it further. We've got the create emitter at entity. That is probably just the effects that we're dealing with. So if we look at the projectile class, there we go. Then at some point in here, we do create impact effects and create terrain effects. And I suspect that these use create emitter at entity. So that's that one right there. We've got a lot of damage areas going on. So damage area is what happens here, right? That's these two calls. And that makes sense, right? Why these are so high, this count. Because we have 400 projectiles. And those 400 projectiles split into 5, right? Which means that this is roughly 2000, right? Because we've got the projectile that splits up. That's what we're seeing right here. And what the information here is of the last 10 ticks. Which means that roughly damage area was called 2200 times, which kind of makes sense given that they don't all explode at the same time. So these numbers, they add up. This is the random float function that we were seeing before. So that's this little fella. We've got an unpack. What unpack is pretty nasty. We've got an offset emitter. We've got onCreate being called a lot as a field right there. And we've got a lot of trails being created. What is a create trail? No. Create trail. That's a global function, okay. We change the velocity, we destroy a lot of stuff. This is the string lower I was talking about earlier, right, from the import. Right there. We retrieve some armies and we retrieve some blueprints. And the last two are again part of right here. So, right, so we've got a blueprint call here. Do we have another one? Nope. But given that we have 900 blueprint calls, and this is the projectile that splits up, so that seems decent. We've got get armies 900 times. That's this one here probably. Anyway, I don't know what these are though. Would you happen to know that, Sprouto? What are these lambda calls?
Spoon actually has some insight into those. He thinks they are inline function calls that are not named. So, you know,
local ball place function.
Yeah, where there's no name applied to it, and they're usually like inline wait ticks or such things like that.
So something like this random float here.
Right.
Because this is a function, now it's inlined? Or is this not?
I don't think that's what he's referring to, but it could be. We're not sure that we've trapped all of the possible causes for lambda. You'll notice that in your own profiler there, you've got 3 different occurrences of lambda. So we're not quite sure. Yeah, they're coming from different places, and I think it really is just a placeholder for unnamed functions that it cannot otherwise identify.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them anyway.
Yes.
That's the important part here. And another important observation is all of these here are globals. We've got another global, and the reason these matter as global is because it's very easy to make them an up value, like this little fella. And up values are significantly faster. Right, so all in all, we've got the data that shows us that there's a lot of room for improvement, and we can see that in the code, right, of the projectile. If we follow the creation of the projectile, then we can see all of that happening. That's the analysis. Let's turn off the profiler real quick. There we go. So our baseline is roughly 10-11 milliseconds. If we turn on the profiler, it's about 20 milliseconds. So we're gonna make sure that we confirm our baseline, our changes when it's turned off. And now it's just a matter of start doing it, right? Start optimizing this away. But before we do that, we're going to take another break.